All right, so are you ready for a deep dive today?
Always.
We're going to be looking at this YouTube video about Wansdyke.
Okay.
And, Wansdyke is one of those earthworks that people have been kind of, scratching their heads over for centuries.
Yeah.
Assuming it was defensive. But
Yeah.
We're going to be bringing in the research of Robert John Langdon, who uses LiDAR data.
Mm-hmm.
And he's really kind of turning the tables on what we thought we knew about these earthworks.
Right.
So we've got his blogs, we've got his book, and we're going to be kind of, putting this YouTube video up against those sources.
Yeah. Sounds fascinating.
Yeah. So I guess we can jump right into it, right?
Let's do it.
So the video starts off by saying that Wansdyke can't be any older than 903 CE.
Okay.
Because it was built by the Saxons.
Right.
But Langdon's research, using LiDAR to look beneath the surface, is showing evidence that kind of blows that theory out of the water. He's found features indicating that these dikes could date back to like the Mesolithic or even the Neolithic periods.
Wow. That's a huge difference.
Yeah, we're talking thousands of years older.
Right.
And it's fascinating because the video relies on these early historians.
Oh, yeah.
Like William Stukeley, Sir Richard Coulthor.
Mm-hmm.
And they just looked at Wansdyke and said, well, it looks like an Iron Age hill fort, so it must be from that period.
Right, just based on appearances.
But Langdon's work shows that, looks can be deceiving.
Absolutely, especially when you've got LiDAR revealing what's hidden underground.
It's like those crime shows where they use luminol
Oh, yeah.
to find bloodstains you can't see with the naked eye.
Yeah.
Suddenly the whole story changes.
Precisely. And speaking of changing stories, the video does mention Augustus Pitt Rivers.
Okay.
He was the one who figured out that Wansdyke predates Roman roads because of how they intersect. Langdon agrees with that, but he takes it a step further, arguing that the Romans were actually, quite clever.
Right.
They saw this existing network of canals.
Oh, okay.
These impressive ditches already dug. And they thought, well, hey, we can use this.
So not just lazy Romans, but opportunistic Romans.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Okay, so the video throws out a bunch of theories about Wansdyke's purpose, defense, boundary marker, symbol of authority, all plausible, I guess.
Yeah.
But kind of vague.
Right.
And then they show this section of Wansdyke with a sharp, 90-degree bend in it.
Okay.
And I'm thinking, who builds a defensive wall with a sharp turn like that?
Yeah, that's where Langdon's LiDAR analysis really comes in handy.
Okay.
He points out that this bend makes perfect sense if you consider that water levels have changed dramatically over time. What might have been a straight canal thousands of years ago, as the water receded, it would needed adjustments, creating these seemingly illogical features that have puzzled archaeologists for centuries.
So the landscape itself is like a witness to history, and LiDAR is finally letting us hear its testimony.
It's a really poetic way to put it. I like that.
And what's even more compelling is that Langdon's research isn't limited to just interpreting the shape of these earthworks.
Yeah.
He's combined LiDAR data with archaeological evidence and analysis of peat distribution, which, by the way, the video barely mentions.
Right.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. They talked about optically stimulated luminescence dating, suggesting Wansdyke might be from the 5th century CE. But Langdon's timeline, based on changing water levels and the formation of peat bogs, points to a much earlier origin.
Right, and that's crucial because peat only forms in very specific waterlogged environments.
Right.
So if you find peat near Wansdyke, it suggests that the area was once much wetter than it is today.
Okay.
Which supports Langdon's idea of a prehistoric canal system.
Hold on, can we back up for a second? I realize I might be a bit behind here. What exactly is this LiDAR technology?
Okay.
And why is it so revolutionary for understanding these ancient structures?
That's a great question. Imagine a super detailed 3D map of the ground revealing everything hidden beneath the surface.
Okay.
That's essentially what LiDAR does. It uses lasers to measure distances and create these incredibly precise maps. And those maps can show us features that are completely invisible to the naked eye.
Wow.
Things like buried ditches, ancient settlements, even faint traces of pathways.
Really?
It's like having X-ray vision for archaeology.
Wow, so it's not just looking at the earthworks themselves, it's about understanding the entire landscape in which they were built.
Precisely. And that's where Langdon's work becomes so compelling. He's not just reinterpreting existing structures, he's using LiDAR to build a whole new model for understanding prehistory. A model that takes into account changing environmental conditions,
Yeah.
and the incredible ingenuity of those who came before us.
Okay, now that is mind-blowing. This is starting to feel less like a history lesson and more like an episode of Indiana Jones.
Haha, I can see why you'd say that. And we're just getting started. Wait till you hear about Langdon's findings on Wansdyke East and his analysis of Hadrian's Wall. Buckle up, this deep dive is about to get even deeper. Let's zoom in on Wansdyke East.
Okay.
This is where the YouTube video really starts to lose its footing.
Right.
They zoom in on these flint pits near the dike.
Yeah.
And kind of brush them off, you know?
Sure.
But Langdon, using LiDAR, he actually mapped the density of these pits and found this consistent pattern along the dike that's hard to ignore.
Oh, wow.
He even did calculations to estimate, like, how long it would have taken to create those pits.
Okay.
Which raises some, serious questions about the traditional timelines presented in the video.
That's a classic example of how technology is forcing us to re-examine what we thought we knew.
Right.
Like we can no longer just look at something and make assumptions based on its appearance.
Yeah.
We need to dig deeper, literally. And LiDAR is the shovel.
I love that analogy, yeah.
And speaking of digging deeper,
Yes.
the video quotes this archaeologist, P.J. Fowler,
Okay.
who claimed that the East Dike could have been built in just 30 days
30 days.
with a massive workforce.
Oh, wow.
Now, Langdon, being the meticulous researcher that he is,
Right.
actually crunched the numbers and called Fowler out on this.
Okay, I gotta hear this.
Wait, hold on. 30 days.
Yeah.
To build a structure that stretches for miles.
Right.
Even for the ancient world, that seems a bit far-fetched.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
Right.
Langdon points out,
Yeah.
the logistical nightmare
Yeah.
of feeding, housing, and managing such a massive workforce for a month-long construction project.
Yeah.
His own calculations, based on, a more reasonable work rate and team size,
Okay.
suggest that building Wansdyke East would have taken years, possibly even decades. And this ties into another fascinating point.
Okay. What's that?
Well, Langdon's analysis suggests that Wansdyke and potentially many other dikes
Right.
weren't built in one go as these, massive single undertakings.
Right.
Instead, they were likely constructed in sections over time, possibly by different groups of people,
Right.
reflecting changes in, population, technology, even the landscape itself.
Okay, so now I'm really starting to see the limitations of this YouTube video. They're presenting this very static, one-dimensional view of Wansdyke.
Right.
Like it just popped up out of nowhere, fully formed.
Yeah, yeah.
But Langdon's work is showing us that it was a much more
Dynamic. Yeah.
and evolving structure,
Yeah.
shaped by the needs and capabilities of the people who built and used it.
Over centuries.
Over centuries.
Maybe even millennia.
Maybe even millennia, yeah.
It's like the difference between looking at a single snapshot
Yeah?
and watching a time-lapse video. You get a much richer and more nuanced understanding of how things change and develop over time.
Right.
And remember that 90-degree bend we talked about earlier?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
The video tries to explain it away as like,
Some kind of defensive feature?
yeah, some defensive feedback.
But it just doesn't hold up
It doesn't, does it?
to scrutiny.
No. But through Langdon's LiDAR lens, that bend becomes a key piece of evidence supporting his theory.
Okay.
He argues that the bend is a result of changing water levels over time.
Right.
As the water receded,
Yeah.
the canal would have needed adjustments to remain functional,
I see.
resulting in these seemingly inexplicable turns and deviations.
It's like those ancient riverbeds you see in the desert, right?
Yes.
They were once flowing with water.
Yeah.
But now they're just these dry, winding channels etched into the landscape.
Exactly.
Except in this case, the river is a man-made canal.
Right.
And the evidence is hidden beneath the surface, waiting to be uncovered by LiDAR.
A perfect analogy.
And it highlights how the landscape itself is constantly changing,
Yeah.
which in turn influences how humans interact with it and adapt their structures and technologies over time.
Exactly.
This concept of adaptation is central to Langdon's argument.
Yeah.
He believes that these prehistoric canals weren't just abandoned as the water receded.
Right.
They were repurposed and modified to serve new functions,
Exactly.
reflecting the evolving needs of the communities that relied on them. So it's not just about the canals themselves.
Right.
It's about understanding how they fit into the larger...
General and environmental landscape.
Yeah, it's about seeing these structures as part of a
A living, breathing system.
Yeah, a living, breathing system that changed and adapted over time.
Precisely. And to illustrate this point, Langdon provides some fascinating examples of how the Romans, centuries later, actually repurposed these prehistoric canals for their own needs.
Okay.
He points to Hadrian's Wall, where the vallum, a ditch running parallel to the wall, might have actually been a pre-existing dike.
Oh, wow.
That the Romans simply adapted for their own defensive purposes.
That's incredible.
Isn't it?
So we're not just talking about some, like, isolated prehistoric phenomenon.
Right.
These canals had a lasting impact on the landscape.
Yes.
Influencing how later civilizations interacted with and shaped the land.
Exactly. It's like a ripple effect through time.
Right.
Where the actions of one generation have unintended consequences for those who come after them.
It's a great way to put it.
And this brings us to one of the most controversial aspects of Langdon's research.
Okay.
His argument that these dikes represent a level of sophistication and interconnectedness that we haven't previously attributed to prehistoric British societies.
Well.
He suggests that these weren't just, simple ditches dug for local drainage or irrigation.
You're right.
They were part of a planned and engineered network of waterways that facilitated trade, transportation, and communication across the entire island.
Okay, now we're getting into some truly groundbreaking territory.
Right.
This is where the YouTube video completely falls apart.
Yeah.
Because they never even entertain the possibility that prehistoric Britons could have been capable of such complex engineering feats.
Right.
They stick to this very simplistic narrative of isolated settlements and limited technological capabilities.
It's understandable, I guess, that the video creators would shy away from such a radical idea.
Yeah.
It challenges the very foundations of what we thought we knew about prehistory.
Right.
But that's what makes Langdon's work so exciting.
Yeah.
He's not afraid to ask difficult questions, to challenge conventional wisdom.
Yeah.
And to propose bold new interpretations based on the evidence he's uncovered.
Right. And he's not just relying on LiDAR data.
No.
He's bringing together multiple lines of evidence.
Exactly.
Archaeology, geology, hydrology, even analysis of ancient pollen and plant remains, to build a comprehensive picture of how these canal systems might have functioned within the larger prehistoric landscape.
It's like he's piecing together a giant jigsaw puzzle.
Oh, yeah.
And each new piece of evidence he finds is adding more detail and complexity to the picture.
That's a great analogy.
And what's emerging is a picture that's far more dynamic and interconnected than anything we've imagined before.
Wow.
It's a picture of prehistoric Britain that's teeming with activity, where people are moving across the landscape, trading goods, sharing ideas, and shaping the course of history in ways that we're only beginning to understand.
I'm starting to think that this YouTube video we're watching is more valuable for what it doesn't say than what it does.
That's an interesting perspective.
It highlights just how much we've been missing, how much we've overlooked by clinging to these outdated narratives about prehistory.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's the gaps in our knowledge, the things we don't know, that are the most revealing. They force us to question our assumptions and to look for new explanations. And in the case of Langdon's research, those new explanations are pointing towards a much more complex and fascinating prehistoric world than we ever thought possible.
So where do we go from here?
That's a great question.
We've seen the limitations of the YouTube video. We've explored the potential of LiDAR.
Yeah.
And we've delved into Langdon's thought-provoking research.
Right.
What's the next step in this deep dive?
Well, I think that the most crucial step is to consider the implications of Langdon's findings.
Yeah.
If he's right, and these dikes were indeed part of a vast interconnected canal system, then we need to reevaluate everything we thought we knew about prehistoric British society.
Right.
We need to rethink their capabilities, their technologies, their social structures, even their understanding of the natural world.
Right.
And that's what we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive.
Okay.
Get ready for a mind-bending journey into a prehistoric world that's far more sophisticated and interconnected than anything you've ever imagined.
We've spent this whole deep dive sort of picking apart this YouTube video on Wansdyke.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's been a bit like watching a magician's trick unfold in reverse.
I like that.
Like the video tries to present this neat and tidy explanation for these ancient earthworks. But Langdon's research with LiDAR is like pulling back the curtain and exposing all the smoke and mirrors.
It's a great analogy, and what's revealed behind that curtain is a much more complex and nuanced story than the one presented in the video.
Exactly. They're so focused on this idea of Wansdyke as this single continuous defensive structure built by the Saxons.
Right.
But Langdon's findings suggest something way more intriguing, that these dikes are remnants of a vast prehistoric canal system built in sections over time and potentially repurposed for various functions as the landscape changed.
And remember, it's not just about Wansdyke. Langdon is finding similar patterns at other ancient sites across Britain.
Right.
For example, his analysis of Hadrian's Wall suggests that the Romans might have incorporated pre-existing dikes into their defensive system.
Okay.
You know, they were masters of adaptation, recognizing the value of these ancient waterways and integrating them into their own infrastructure.
That's what I find so fascinating about Langdon's work.
Yeah.
It's not just reinterpreting individual structures. It's about connecting the dots and seeing these earthworks as part of a much larger, more complex network that span the entire island.
Right, and that network suggests a level of sophistication and interconnectedness that we haven't traditionally attributed to prehistoric British societies.
Right.
It challenges the textbook image of isolated, primitive Britons.
Yeah.
And forces us to reimagine them as skilled engineers, capable of planning and constructing complex canal systems that facilitated trade, transportation, and communication across vast distances.
It's like discovering a hidden chapter in history, one that completely changes our understanding of the past.
And that's the power of new technology like LiDAR.
Right.
It's allowing us to see the landscape with fresh eyes, revealing hidden features and connections that were previously invisible. It's like having a time machine, not to travel through time physically, but to see the past with a level of detail and clarity that was unimaginable just a few decades ago.
So if Langdon's right, and these dikes were indeed part of a vast prehistoric canal network, what does that tell us about these ancient societies? What can we learn from them?
It tells us that they were far more advanced and interconnected than we've given them credit for.
Okay.
They had a deep understanding of their environment, they were skilled engineers, and they were capable of undertaking massive construction projects that spanned generations.
Wow.
They were in many ways pioneers of their time, pushing the boundaries of what was possible and leaving behind a legacy that's still visible in the landscape today.
It's a powerful reminder that the past is full of surprises, and that we should never underestimate the ingenuity and resilience of those who came before us.
Absolutely. And it's a call to action for all of us, especially for those interested in history and archaeology. We need to keep exploring, keep questioning, keep pushing the boundaries of what we think we know.
Right.
There are still so many mysteries out there waiting to be uncovered, and new technologies like LiDAR are giving us the tools to do just that.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
I'm left with this image in my mind.
Okay.
It's not the static defensive Wansdyke presented in that YouTube video. Instead, it's a vibrant, bustling waterway teeming with life and activity.
I like that.
I see boats laden with goods traveling from one settlement to another, connecting communities and spreading ideas.
That's beautiful.
It's a prehistoric world that's dynamic, interconnected, and full of possibilities.
Yeah.
And it's a world that we're only beginning to rediscover and understand, thanks to researchers like Langdon and the power of new technologies like LiDAR.
That's a beautiful image, and I think it captures the essence of what makes this research so compelling.
Yeah.
It's not just about reinterpreting the past, it's about reimagining it, about seeing the world through the eyes of those who came before us and recognizing their ingenuity, their resilience, and their interconnectedness.
Absolutely.
And who knows, maybe this deep dive has inspired some of you listening to explore the hidden history in your own backyards.
Yeah.
You might be surprised at what you find.
Absolutely. Well, this has been an amazing deep dive. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was fascinating.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And to everyone listening, thanks for joining us on this incredible journey. We hope you've enjoyed it. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and who knows, maybe you'll be the one to uncover the next big revelation about our prehistoric past.